Hi, I'm Tammy Potter, and welcome to the Pregnancy Process Podcast, a show designed to help you navigate the hugely transformative journey to motherhood, where you'll hear the unique experience of experts in this area and the incredible stories of women sharing their conception, pregnancy, and postnatal journeys so that you can have a healthier, more informed pregnancy. In today's episode, I talk to nutritionist, published researcher, exercise scientist, and host of Healthy Her podcast, Amelia Philips. And we're diving into Amelia's blueprint to mastering maternal health, covering everything from understanding, managing, and measuring key health biomarkers to the importance of embracing a proactive approach to health. We'll explore the pivotal role of pregnancy and postnatal care, navigating postnatal depletion and fatigue, the power of targeted supplementation, and why integrating movement and nutrition into daily life is crucial for your overall well-being during this transformative time. Amelia, thank you so much for your time today. It is fantastic to have you here with us.
Oh, I am so excited to talk to you and your beautiful listeners. Oh my gosh, we could just talk about this all day. I don't know how we're going to keep it nice and condensed, but I know there'll be lots of amazing truth bombs and hacks and tips that our listeners can take away from
Amazing.
today.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation as well. And I think the best place to start would be talking about the pregnancy and postnatal journey and why this is so pivotal for a woman's long-term health span and lifespan.
That is such a great question to start on. And I feel personally so passionately about this stage for a woman, this stage of pregnancy and postpartum, because I have seen the good news stories come out of it, and I've also seen the not so good news stories come. It's a really pivotal time in a woman's life to either set herself up for a really healthy next stage, or in some cases, it becomes really, really difficult. And there are so many really simple tips and tricks that a lot of women wish, oh my goodness, I wish I knew that with my firstborn or through that first pregnancy. And I've seen this happen time and time again, where let me paint a bit of a picture for you. What happens is prior to having children, this woman is able to look after herself well. She's able to find time to exercise, to eat well. She's focusing on herself. But then, of course, what happens is such a big lifestyle shift happens with pregnancy and then with post-baby that suddenly you find yourself, first of all, questioning your body throughout pregnancy. What is going on? Is this normal? I'm worried for my baby. I'm worried for my own health. And so there's that reticence to do some of the things that come naturally to them. And then secondly, you're suddenly now not only looking after yourself, but you're looking after all these other people in your life, your babies, your partner, your family unit. And it becomes so much harder to focus on yourself, and you tend to always want to put yourself last. So that dynamic can set up a cascade that then finds a woman. And I'm dealing particularly at the moment with not only pregnancy and postpartum, but I'm now dealing with a lot of women going through menopause. And if we rewind the clock and we can see what started to happen when they started having their babies, you can see that some of those shifts have led them to where they are now with their health. So that's why I've seen it work so well, where a woman's like, you know what, I am having this baby, but I need to put my own health first, and I really need to carve out that time and create that schedule, because that is actually the best gift I can be giving my baby. And then you see those rewards cascade on decades down the track.
That putting themselves last is such a common thing that I see in so many women. And sometimes it's like they might have had 2 children and they're 5 years down the track or 7 years, 8 years down the track because their second child has only just gone to school, if there's been a bit of a gap. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I've got time for myself now. And that's when they start looking after themselves. But they've got an 8-year lag period where they haven't been sleeping properly, they haven't been eating properly, they haven't been exercising or doing any of the key health indicators and looking after themselves. So they're really coming from I don't like to say back step, but they kind of are, which is really sad.
It's funny, you remind me of an email I once got from a woman that made me laugh and cry at the same time on one of my online programs. And she wrote, "Hey, Amelia, it's time that I lose the baby weight." And then she put in brackets, "My baby's 21." and it honestly feels like that. My oldest is 11 and my youngest is 5 and just started school this year. And I can honestly say I'm almost just coming out of it now. And I've been pregnant and breastfeeding and having children and dealing with children now for 12 years. And I'm almost now just coming out and poking my little head back up going, "Oh, hello world, I'm back." It can last a long time.
It really does. And, you'd mentioned before, I wish I knew that before. And I tell you, there's a reason why I ask every single guest on this podcast, what's the one thing you wish women knew before you had a baby? And that's because that phrase, "I wish I knew that before," the last thing I ever want to hear from anybody that I can touch in my sphere of influence is, "I wish I knew that before." And I know that you're the same as well. And I'm going to go into an ideal kind of scenario here and give an example of a woman who's currently in her conception journey and wants to make sure she maintains her health status across her pregnancy and postnatal journey. So if she was coming to you, what measurements and markers would you recommend that she look at? And why would you be looking at these?
So basically, there's a whole bunch of biomarkers that we want to learn to understand and not just get the okay from our doctor, but actually learn to understand what they mean. So starting with those, we've got our folate level. So we've got a whole bunch of micronutrients. I'm going to start with the micronutrients. And so your folate levels is one. Your iron levels. And if you look on, every time you get a blood test, you always must ask the doctor to send you a copy as well. They put on the referral patient. And so you'll be sent a copy. Okay. So folate, ferritin. So your ferritin levels are your iron levels. And there's a whole bunch of other ones like hemoglobin, but for today, keep it simple. Your ferritin levels, you want to make sure those are above 30. And if you're below 30, you should be supplementing. If you're below 15, probably needing an iron infusion. You want to be understanding what your B12 is. You want to be understanding what your zinc levels are, your vitamin D levels, your iodine levels, your thyroid markers, so that's TSH, T4, and T3, and your metabolic markers. These are really important and they become even more important throughout pregnancy and then post. And the main ones with your metabolic markers, so these are about how your body is handling sugars and will impact weight as well. So if you're metabolically inflexible, then these markers will start to show, and they'll show these things well before your doctor raises any red flags. This is why for optimal health, or what I call proactive health, we have to manage this ourselves, because our doctors are just going to look for disease. But we're smarter than that. We're going to nip this in the bud before that type 2 diabetes, that insulin resistance, gestational diabetes kicks in. So with metabolic markers, the main ones are fasting insulin, HbA1c, which is the most important one, the percentage. There's 2 measurements, so the one that has a percentage on it, and then something called your HOMA, HOMA, your HOMA ratio. So I've thrown a lot of things at you. So the people that I manage, these are the main markers that I'm tracking. I may have forgotten a couple off the top of my head. But, inflammation. Yes, that's the other really important one. And that's not so important for conception, as this is just important for overall health. These are the really important ones. For conception, there's a whole bunch of hormones as well. But again, I'm going to park those because we're kind of focusing a little bit more on general health, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the conception takes it into a whole other realm. And I think for that optimal health, and I love that because, and you mentioned something about the doctors and how I think it was your thyroid or your metabolic markers, they
Yeah.
will show up much sooner than it would be flagged with your doctor. And I think that's such an important point, that we need to be really proactive in managing our own health and well-being, especially around getting our bloods done on a regular basis to make sure all of these levels are in that optimum level. And because I think a lot of people don't actually realize that the doctors look at kind of unhealthy levels almost.
They're looking for
Hmm.
disease. So you think about a doctor. Doctors are incredible and they do the most amazing job, but they are slammed. And they are booked out. They're seeing patient after patient. They've got 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if you're lucky. And so they are scanning your bloods. They're just looking for disease, and your results will only get pinged if you are out of range. And those reference ranges are ginormous. They're not optimal health. They're just literally a snapshot of population. All right. So already we're not even dealing with reference ranges that signal healthy. Okay. And so disease is not a switch that just suddenly gets flicked on in your body overnight. Our beautiful bodies start with little whispers, and they whisper to us very quietly, "Hey, I'm not handling your sugar very well." And then that whisper, "Oh, liver's going to kick in now, so I'm going to pump some more cholesterol, some more LDL, triglycerides to try to mop up this sugar that we're not dealing with." And then the whispers turn into, grumbles, and the grumbles turn. Eventually, the body roars, and then it triggers disease. So let's get to know our bodies at that point of whispering. And when you're young and healthy and before you have babies, I wish I knew this before I had babies. I wish I knew my markers before I had babies and what they really meant, because maybe then I wouldn't have had the thyroid challenges I had. Maybe then I wouldn't have had the anemia that it took me ages to finally work out what was going on.
And I maybe wasn't going to come to this right at this point, but we seem to have come here naturally. You are a busy mum of four, and you've just mentioned that you've encountered some issues along your own journey of being a mum. Can we talk about those a
Mhm.
little bit and how you've managed your own health and well-being across that
Yeah.
journey?
I often laugh and go, if I can't get it right, and I've been doing this since I was 17 years old, and best practice, if even my body gets totally thrown out of whack with babies, what bloody hope does the rest of the normal world that hasn't done master's degrees in university and dedicated their career to health have? But this is the beauty of the human body. So I'll tell you, I have 4 babies in 5 years. So that was probably a mistake.
You held up beautifully, though, let me tell you. You're an amazing pregnant lady.
Luckily, I had you to keep me sane through, was it 2 of them or
2,
3 of them? I
2.
can't remember now. So when I fell pregnant so I'm very fit and healthy, healthy weight, healthy everything. I'm not a vegan, very balanced, or I don't have a particular type of diet or any pre-issues or anything like that. So I fell pregnant with baby number 2, and my thyroid just went a bit haywire, and I ended up with hypothyroidism. And so that is very dangerous for the fetus. So you want to get on your thyroxine straight away. So diligently took the thyroid medication for the next 5 years while I had the rest of my babies and breastfed. And then I went to my endocrinologist after I'd finished breastfeeding and finished having babies. And I said, okay, time for me to come off my thyroxine. I'm fit, I'm healthy. There's nothing, my thyroid's fine. I'm just on this medication. And she said, honey, you're just going to have to stay on this for the rest of your life. And I was like, what? And I said, what percentage of your patients come off thyroxine? And she said 5%. And I just wasn't happy with that. I'm a nutritionist. I'm an exercise scientist. I'm, a healthy person. I just wasn't happy. And so she was quite reluctant to work with me to come off it. So that led me on a journey to find an integrative GP, which is essentially a GP that has done lifestyle medicine training, so extra training. And they, rather than going straight to medication, although they will look for lifestyle interventions, whether it's nutrition, stress management, sleep, supplements. So I found this most amazing integrative GP, Dr. Yasmina Dedick-Hagen, and she did a bunch of tests and she goes, I reckon we can get you off this. I can see what's going on with your thyroid. She didn't even put me on supplements. She put me on food, specific food, 5 Brazil nuts a day, packet of seaweed a day, and going gluten-free. And 6 months later, I slowly, over 6 months, weaned off my thyroxine. And, 9 years later, my thyroid's perfectly healthy. And what the big discovery for me in that was, because I had to get my bloods every 12 weeks throughout and for a couple of years afterwards, was how much we can learn about our bodies by understanding these biomarkers. And so that was really unlocked a whole lot for me. And I couldn't believe that had I not progress further, I'd still be sitting here taking this medication today, which would be masking a whole bunch of other issues around my nutrient deficiencies and the impact of gluten on my body personally. I just keep feeding that stuff or not feeding myself with those things, and it would be masking what the root cause was.
It's incredible, isn't it, how getting those balances right and adjusting a few things can have you going from feeling low energy and sluggish to actually feeling super energized again. It's incredible.
It absolutely is. And, fatigue is a really tricky one because a client will present to me with fatigue, and this could mean a range of things from I didn't sleep very well last night through to you have terminal cancer and you have 4 months to live and everything in between. So to try to uncover what is causing the fatigue, you've got to be really careful because you could literally be dealing with someone that has something pretty major going on. And so for me, there's 55 biomarkers that I will measure as a big snapshot that basically is the catcher's mitt. And I can see, well, if there was something sinister going on, there'd be a whole bunch of markers that would light up and give us an indication for further testing. And so then fatigue becomes essentially a detective game where you start with your insufficiencies and your deficiencies. And I cannot tell you how many people present to me with low vitamin D, low iron, low magnesium levels.
B12.
And if you just... a B12, 100%. If just one of those is not even deficient, so not even off the reference range, if it's just insufficient, you're going to be knackered. And I can't tell you how many people come to me with all of those markers insufficient. And mums, oh my goodness, particularly in the first 5 years postpartum, that postnatal depletion is a real thing. Now, if that woman had come to me, and let's say she's a little bit overweight as well, she hasn't quite managed to get the baby weight off because she's absolutely knackered. Let's say I said to her, all right, you need to exercise and we need to flog you because you've just got to lose that weight because that weight is dragging you down. If your biomarkers are insufficient or deficient, the last thing we should be doing is flogging you. And what we need to do is restore that balance. And then we can look at what else we can add on top. So yeah, it's a bit of a detective where you're ruling out the nasty stuff and then you're working your way down. So biomarkers is the next one. Let's say you come in and your biomarkers, everything looks tickety-boo, but there might still be protein levels, for example, a serum protein I look at as well. So we might do some targeted supplementation if that's needed. But if all those markers are perfectly healthy, well then let's keep going on. So let's look at your emotional health. Let's look at your sleep. Let's look at your stress. So for example, a great test is called the DAS-21. It's an online quiz that anyone can do. Depression, anxiety, stress score. It's all standardized. So if you're like, am I just in a grumpy mood, or is there some sort of, real clinical signs of depression, anxiety, or stress? Just do the DAS, do that questionnaire, and you can rule that one out and go, okay, my mental health's okay, even though I'm a bit cranky and shitty with the people around me. And then you keep working it down. How's my physical health? Am I injured, or have I lost a lot of condition? Am I comparing my energetic self before kids to the person I am now, and I'm actually, my fitness levels dropped, my strength's dropped, I've got, injuries or aches and pains, that really zaps your energy. And so you keep working through the list, and then you will identify what is my biggest thief of energy. And then you've got to just get fanatical about whatever that area is. If it's sleep, if it's making sure you're taking these targeted supplements and nutrients, you just got to go for the next 6 weeks. This one area I am going to absolutely nail. And you'll feel amazing after that. You'll get yourself out of the doldrums.
I'm just sitting here nodding in agreement to so much stuff that you're saying. I'm just like, yes, tick, tick. And oh gosh, there's so many places that we can go from here. But that, so many women, their first place is and obviously being a strength coach that works in this area, I have to be very careful what I say here, but sadly, so many women do just go back to flogging themselves in the gym or just trying to run it off, if you know what I mean. And sometimes that's just really not the approach that needs to be taken. There needs to be a slow rebuild and looking at all of these other things that you're talking about as well. And the amount of women that I see postnatally, and they take their baby to do their 6-week check, and they take their baby to get immunized and do all of the checks for the baby, but they really neglect to do their own personal blood work check, which is why, going back to that ideal scenario, if you are in your conception journey and you haven't yet fallen pregnant, then the things that you should be looking at are all those biomarkers that you've just discussed, being like your folate, your iron, your zinc, vitamin D, B12, thyroid, metabolic markers, all that type of stuff. So let's say we've done that. And everything's looking okay, like obviously needs to be changed a little bit. But then how would you then go about tracking and making adjustments to these measurements and markers as you go across your pregnancy and postnatal journey?
Well, throughout the pregnancy, the good thing is that you're having your bloods done really regularly. So there's always the opportunity to say to your obstetrician, hey, while you're writing that referral for the bloods, I'm feeling tired, or I noticed that, these particular markers were a little low before pregnancy. Can we just throw a few of those in as well? Because that will then give you a bit of an indication. Throughout the 9 months, your body goes a bit haywire. So expect those markers throughout there are less important in the long run, but they're important obviously for that 9-month period. The main one to really understand is that gestational diabetes markers. So all the metabolic ones, you got to have that horrible glucose tolerance test and all those sorts of things, because the research around gestational diabetes and then developing type 2 diabetes is a little bit scary in that I think it's
like the 10-year window, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's a 12-fold. If you develop gestational diabetes, it's either 7 or 12-fold chance of developing type 2 diabetes later on. And type 2 diabetes is the fastest growing disease globally. And I see it a lot, how challenging it is once you're in that state. So if you are starting to get flags from the doctor that your biomarkers, or particularly around those blood sugars, starting to elevate, it's something that we really need to focus on in our lifestyle choices, in our diet choices, in our exercise and activity, because of those ramifications further down the track. It's not just a pregnancy thing. But other than that, a lot of the other markers like your iron, etc., it can leave a legacy afterwards. But I would just really want to hone in on those metabolic markers and how important they are, and also how easy they are to manage. So, for example, and you're going to love my tip here, Tammy, movement is one of the best things you can do to manage your blood sugar levels. So, for example, if you are seeing those HbA1c, fasting glucose, fasting insulin, HOMA, if you're seeing those markers starting to rise, every time you eat, get up and move afterwards. It could be strolling around the block. It's just loading your schedule for the day so that you eat and then you go and do your errands down into the village. Then you're hanging the washing out, or you're going and doing I'm not talking about a heart. You don't have to go to the gym, but your muscles are glucose mopping machines. And what happens is when you eat high carbohydrate foods, and I'll talk about diet, what to do to manage blood sugar through pregnancy and postpartum in a moment. But when your blood sugar spikes, it either has to get digested and then insulin has to do its thing. The blood glucose enters the bloodstream and then insulin has to come and bind with it, and liver kicks in, and it's a whole process. If your muscles are hungry and they get hungry when they just move a little bit, as soon as you start moving, blood goes in and they get hungry, blood glucose bypasses this whole insulin process, and your muscles will literally soak up that glucose. So that's one of the best things you can do is move after eating.
I love that little tip,
Just
like
10
even
minutes.
just going and hanging out the washing, because I tell you, and I know that you track things as well, but my Aura ring, when I'm getting ready in the morning to go to work, or if I'm just doing stuff around the house, it's like, are you on the elliptical? So
Yeah.
obviously it's picking up that you're moving and doing stuff. So, and it does it quite consistently across the day. So everything that you're saying, obviously
Yeah.
it's true, but when you've got feedback like that, it's like,
it
absolutely.
adds
And just
up.
something so
It does.
simple as hanging out the washing or just moving around the house and putting some stuff away could be the difference.
Well, you bring up a really great point that's really relevant for pregnancy and life after babies, which is it becomes a lot harder to structure in a lovely full hour of exercise at the gym with the coffee afterwards after you have kids. It's doable, and I did it, and you have lots of clients that do it, but it is a lot harder to do that. And so if you've got a paradigm around exercise, it's kind of I'm training for my hour and then I'm kind of sitting down and quite sedentary for the day, that can become quite problematic if you find your life is so busy and unpredictable you can't train. So what you're saying is this concept that these little snackable moments of movement throughout the day really add up, because your Aura ring told you so, and my Apple Watch tells me exactly the same thing. It's a great mindset shift, because suddenly when you've got the baby and you're going to, play some games and have a dance around the kitchen with Bubba on your hip, suddenly you're mopping up that glucose and you're, doing your 10,000 steps a day, and you didn't even have to find it a whole hour to do it in.
That's really important. Now, you did mention talking about nutrition and vitamin and
Yes.
mineral stores, and we know that pregnancy can severely impact a woman's vitamin and mineral stores. It does. So from a nutritional standpoint, what can you do to help maintain these stores as much as possible during this time?
So we've kind of identified some of the big ones. So we've been talking about iron and how important iron is, and vitamin B12, which is also only found or predominantly found in animal products. So, and iodine is another one. So probably understanding what the main ones are, and then obviously adopting as healthy a eating pattern as possible. And with that in mind, there's a couple of key nutrients that you really want to focus on. And so I would say, so the couple that I just said then, so iron, obviously red meat is one of the richest sources of it. Try to have it with some non-heme iron as well. So your dark green leafies, try to have it with some vitamin C. So I'll always make sure that there's, if I'm having a little fillet of steak, then I'll have the greens and something orange or red that goes with it, like capsicum, carrots, something like that. So trying to get these nutrients from your diet is the first port of call. Okay, food first, and then if you have to target supplement because you've done your biomarker test, you know where your insufficiencies are. So for example, omega-3s are a really important nutrient that is often quite hard to come by, especially throughout pregnancy when you're not meant to eat fish, and people often have an aversion to fish as well. But omega-3 is also fat, so your fatty fish, but remember that's also tinned fish as well. But again, for a lot of people, I just can't even do that in pregnancy. So flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts are great sources, but it's a lot. If you think about the size of a fillet of salmon, it's going to be hard to eat that much in walnuts and flax seeds and chia seeds. So supplementing with omega-3 is a great choice for a lot of people. And there's some supplements have what we call an upper limit, can be a little bit dangerous, whereas a lot of them are quite safe to take. So B12, for example, I very rarely see anyone near their upper limit. So there are some supplements, and omega-3 is another one. If we don't understand your biomarkers fully, they're pretty innocuous. You can take them. So B12, omega-3s, B6 is one to be very careful of. Okay, so this is in a lot of it's in a lot of those broad spectrum supplements. Where you got like a multi or something like that, but you hit your B6 upper limit very quickly, and if it's quite dangerous, it can be toxic at a high level. So if you start to feel some tingling in your fingers, that's called neuropathy. I always just say to people, just if you are taking those general ones, just have a look at how much B6 people, I don't know why, but B6 gets pumped into lots of things. Zinc has an upper limit as well. So unless you've had your zinc tested, and same with iron as well, a ferritin, unless those are tested, I wouldn't be supplementing unless you know what those levels are. And iodine's the same.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Is there any particular types of foods, I think, outside of the heme, iron, or your red meats and your like fatty fishes? You've mentioned Brazil nuts, but I know that was in relation to the thyroid, but I do know they're very good for pregnancy.
Yeah, so I'll tell you why. That's selenium. So selenium is, if you think about so thyroid gets put under a lot of pressure through pregnancy and postpartum. And when thyroid is under a lot of pressure, it's very hungry for nutrients. Now, in order to make your T4 and T3 hormones, thyroid needs iodine, it needs selenium, and it needs zinc. So if your thyroids are starting to play up, the first question you ask yourself is, am I actually feeding my body the micronutrients, the building blocks, the little pieces of Lego? Am I actually ingesting those so that my thyroid can build and put these together to build the hormones that are going to manage my metabolism effectively, which is what thyroid does. It manages your whole metabolism. So that's why between sort of 4 to 6 Brazil nuts a day is your RDI for selenium. So it's a no-brainer. So, and then a packet of seaweed a day is great for iodine as well. And I did mention gluten-free earlier, and I just want to say that it's not something that everyone needs to do, but if you've got autoimmune issues or some thyroid issues, then it's something to consider, because the gluten molecule, if our bodies are a little intolerant to it, it mimics some of our thyroid molecules, and it can trigger these antibodies that the thyroid starts to attack itself. And so for me it worked, but it's not saying that everyone has to go gluten-free.
Yeah, and being a celiac, I don't mind being gluten-free. I think it's the best thing that I've done for my well-being. But I think when you've got an actual disease stopping you from eating foods, let me tell you, you could not pay me enough money to eat something with gluten in it.
It's great because it basically blocks out all those ultra processed foods that are full of omega-6s, so the seed oils, when we're talking about baked goods, pastries, all the high GI and high carbohydrate foods that are going to play havoc with our metabolic markers. So it really is. It is, as long as you're not just looking for the ultra processed gluten-free foods, it is actually a pretty quick win in cleaning up your diet.
Absolutely. Now, we've mentioned postpartum fatigue, and it's a real thing. And sadly, the source of this can actually be postnatal depletion. And I think so many women, they look to their fatigue and their postnatal fatigue and they're kind of like, well, this is life as a new mum. And I think a lot of it does get swept under the carpet a little bit. People are maybe like, oh, well, that's life as a new mum. You're not sleeping properly. Of course, you're going to be tired. But the thing of it is that sadly, like I said, it can be underlying postnatal depletion, underlying health issues, hormonal imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, like what you've just talked about, your thyroid, just getting chalked up as life as a new mum. You want to be looking at this fatigue a little bit deeper.
Well, you want answers, don't you?
So for this, because you've mentioned sleep, stress management, exercise, nutrition, and emotional health.
They are the pillars, but let's drill down a little bit on those because it can all feel overwhelming, because don't forget that you've now got a family that you're looking after and you've got all those dynamics and you've got bills to pay and you've got pressures and stresses outside of all of that. And if you are feeling like you are struggling to get through the day, then something does need to change, because something will give, and it will either be your sanity, your health, or your relationship, or all of the above. So there's no point suffering in silence. So I guess my first point of call is if this is chronic and you are really feeling like you're struggling to get through the day, please, this is Tammy and I saying we are your activators to say it's time to do something about it. A great first step, if you're maybe just dipping your toe in that chronic fatigue space, is starting to follow Dr. Oscar Serralach. I'm sure you've come across him. He's got an amazing book called The Postnatal Depletion Solution. That's just a lovely, I guess, book to make you feel like you're not going crazy and it's okay. So that's one thing aside. I would then, we kind of talked about that process of elimination. So going to see a doctor or coming to see me or something like that to get those biomarkers tested, that if that feels like, oh, I don't like needles and that all feels too hard or expensive or whatever, then that's absolutely fine. Park that. I would go through your process of elimination. So is it my emotional health? Can I quickly do that 5-minute DAS test to just check? No, it's probably not that. Well, then usually a big cab off the rank is sleep, particularly for mums. And there's a couple of signs. Are you really sleep deprived? And I mean, if you are, you're probably going, no shit, Sherlock. But if you're not quite sure, a good test, there's 2 good test cases. One is when you do finally sit down on the couch after putting the kids to bed, do you make it through the opening credits? Can you actually sit, if you can sit there for an hour or so watching your film noir and you don't fall asleep, that's a good sign. But if you can't make it past the credits, yep, honey, you are sleep deprived. Same thing again, if you wake up in the morning and like you just feel like death warmed up and you're so groggy, that is another really clear sign that you're sleep deprived. But if you're feeling tired, but actually you can get through your show and you're waking up okay, but maybe in a grumpy mood, then maybe it isn't sleep. If it is sleep, we've got to become fanatical about how we can improve our sleep. Okay. And I get that there's a little tiny 12-kilo thing that's out of our control that we can't control. But what you can control is how much you prioritize it. So, for example, making, as soon as the baby goes to bed at night, all right, I'm going to start my wind down routine now. And so I can get to bed an hour earlier. It's sleep hygiene. I mean, there's I've got a 1-pager on kind of the 10 main sleep hygiene rules. And so it's great to just look at those and go, am I actually doing these sleep hygiene rules, such as dark room, phone out of the room, making sure the body loves to fall asleep on a falling temperature. So having a hot shower or a hot bath before bed so that the temperature starts to fall down. There's a whole bunch of these sleep hygiene factors. You can do a little bit of an audit. Go, oh, well, if I'm not really doing any of these particularly well and sleep is my big issue, then that's something to really focus on. But you got to kind of make it a project. Got to go, all right, I'm identifying sleep as my thing, or I'm identifying nutritional deficiencies as my cause of my fatigue. And if you pick one element and just really try to nail that for a few weeks, I find that's a better approach than doing a complete full life overhaul or just putting your head in the sand and ignoring
Because
it.
the full life overhaul just becomes too hard. And then so it's just like an overwhelming. And then you're just like, head in sand. If you know what I mean. I'm so on board with, I use the same approach. It's that layering technique, like focus
Yep.
on one thing, get it right. Focus on the next thing, get that better, not right. It's that layering.
Just one small thing at a time. And it's the same with your diet. For a lot of mums that are coming off having a baby, their cravings have changed. You speak to every mum's different. Some mums, the weight fall off them when they breastfeed. Other mums, the weight piles on when they breastfeed because they're just so hungry all the time. And so when it comes to diet, pick one element. Like, for example, I have a massive sweet tooth. And for me, after the kids went to bed and I was exhausted, all I wanted to do was reward myself on the couch with a massive bowl of ice cream or rice.
I so can't
pudding.
imagine you doing that.
Oh, honey, 7 days a week. Because it's the only bloody thing I look forward to when you've got 4 kids that were, pulling at you left, right, and center. That 1 hour on the couch with Netflix and my amazing bowl of dessert. Like, if you take that away from me and I will murder you, is how I felt. And so actually trying to change that, it seems so simple and silly, but it was really, really hard for me. So I get it. And so someone's saying to me, well, you've got to, change your whole diet, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. No, you know what? I just need to find a few healthy swaps that still satisfy that craving, but that is going to help me reach my health goals and not make me less healthy. And, for me, having a hot chocolate protein shake, actually, which is what I've got right here, right now, having a protein shake as a hot chocolate after dinner was a great healthy swap for me because it's warm, it's nourishing, it's sweet, takes 15 minutes to kind of drink it slowly as opposed to a piece of fruit and a couple of pieces of nuts, which I'll just inhale in 5 minutes and still not feel satisfied. So picking that, what is one area of your diet that you think you could improve on, and then you just, okay, I'm going to focus on that for the next 4 weeks and really try to get to the bottom and change that habit, because habit change is hard.
It sure is. And speaking of habits and sleep habits, that hour or so of scrolling that turns into the 2 hours, that turns into the I've been scrolling after the kids have gone to bed and it's now past midnight and I've been scrolling for ages. But you know what? Or I've been watching episode after episode on Netflix because it's the only time that I get for myself. I think when it comes to sleep, that's something that I know some mums really need to get a handle around.
I think I agree, because it is the only time of the day that we feel like we get to ourselves, and it is such a rewarding experience to collapse onto that couch. And maybe it's the only time that you and your partner are like semi-communicating. And when I say that, it's like we've got an L-shaped couch and my husband's 6'7", so us bonding is basically his size 16 feet across my lap. And us not talking but watching the same show, and that's basically our bonding time. Yes, it's very sad, but
Reality.
So what I will say is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Pick 3 nights a week where you are fanatical about, like I say, going to bed early. For example, so what I did, and this was the only way I could get out of this dessert habit, was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, I do not go into the lounge room. I do not go near the TV. And what I did was I found something that I now say is equally as enjoyable, which is a really lovely little self-care ritual that I have at home, which is basically a bath and playing some music, and I got some aromatherapy, and I'm reading so many more books than I used to. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, I do not go near the kitchen. I turn all the lights out downstairs where we've got our lounge room and our kitchen. I come upstairs, I put the kiddies to bed, and then I go straight into my bedroom. And that ticks a whole bunch of boxes for me, and it got me off that sugar craving. And it's now I actually enjoy that as much as my TV time, but when I go down to the TV in the lounge room on the Thursday, Friday, the weekends, it feels like a treat. And it feels like I'm not on the hamster wheel doing the same thing every single night. So everyone will have their own version of what that is. But my key point here is just pick a couple of nights a week to be disciplined on it. And then you'll find that you'll break that cycle and shift that habit more easily.
It's so good, isn't it? That is a fantastic tip, because it's not an all or nothing thing either. It's just that same layering effect. It's not all or nothing. It's just choose 3 nights a week that you're going to be off devices and then or off the television, not watching continuous episodes on Netflix until after 1 o'clock when the kids are getting up at 5. But also at the same time, you're ticking some self-care and emotional health boxes, you're ticking some sleep boxes there, you're ticking some nutrition boxes there, as well as stress management. So that is a fabulous takeaway. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think just before we head off, I've got 2 more questions for you, because you've talked about targeted supplements here a little bit. And can we have a bit more of a look into what they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, sure. So I'm definitely a fan of targeted supplementing as opposed to broad spectrum blind supplementing. So there's a real mixed debate out in the zeitgeist about supplements, and a lot of people you'll hear or you'll read, it's just makes for expensive wee. And I agree with that if you're just blindly supplementing. But targeted supplementation, and I've seen it. So my Inner Vitality program, I have hundreds of women that do this 55 biomarker test, and then they redo it at the end of 12 weeks. And I can see when you took your vitamin D spray, I can see it jump from 60 to 110. So I can tell you that is not expensive wee. That is a game changer for your energy levels. So do you want me to run through some of my favorite
I would
subs?
love you to,
Targeted
because
ones?
everything that you're saying, which is why I'm furiously nodding, is because I have recently done something kind of similar to what you're talking about, and I can tell you this works. This absolutely works. So thank you. Yes, please.
No worries. And if you are sitting here listening to this and you know you have low iron, or you know you have low levels and you haven't done anything about it, well, let this be your wet fish slap to say, go and get supplementing. And don't just take them for a few weeks and then forget to take them again. 6 weeks, a minimum of 6 weeks, you got to be taking these diligently. So iron, let's start with iron. So Malta-4 is the over-the-counter one that you can take with food. That's kind of just the broad one, and it tends to not have as many gut upsets. But it's a high dose. So make sure your iron levels are low and, take it for maybe 4 weeks. And then I would drop back to maybe once every 3 days. The one that's a little bit more gentle is called Bioheme by Biomedica. And that one is practitioner only. So you can message me if you need help accessing it. But Bioheme, it's got the bisglycinate in it, which is a great form. So they're the 2 that I would recommend for iron. For vitamin D, a liposomal spray. So this means it bypasses the gut and it absorbs under the tongue or on the side of the mouth. So you spray. There's 2 brands I really like. My favorite is the Designs for Health liposomal vitamin D, but again, that is practitioner only. The over-the-counter one is the Bioceuticals D3K2. And depending on your levels, if your levels are below 60, I would do 3 sprays a day under the tongue, holding it there for 30 to 60 seconds. If your levels are above, sitting kind of between 60 to 80, just 1 spray a day is fine. Zinc drops, Bioceuticals do a great zinc drops, usually 3 or 4 drops. Probiotics, again, if you're struggling with your weight, There's an amazing new probiotic, but it's really expensive, but it's so good for weight management. It's called Acromencia, A-K-K, Acromencia. It's by Pendulum, but it is about $100 for, I can't remember if it's 30 or 60, but it's very good. The other supplement for weight management and metabolic markers that is incredible, and you'll see it's advertised a lot for endometriosis and PCOS as well. It's called myo-inositol. And it's a powder, and you have it 1 tablespoon a day. You can just mix it in water, or you sprinkle it on your oats or whatever. The research behind it is incredible for improving insulin sensitivity. So if you're someone that's struggling with stubborn weight and you've had those metabolic markers, or you've got a family history of type 2 diabetes, myo-inositol, and it's very innocuous. It's very, very safe to take. So that would be one, definitely, if weight is an issue for you. And then B12, the Designs for Health, just a pure B12. Don't get a whole B complex with B6 and everything. Just find a pure B12. And again, the liposomal under the tongue spray from Designs for Health is a great one.
That's such a generous share from you. Thank you so much. And I love the sprays and the drops as opposed to the tablets. But
yeah,
that is incredible.
Magnesium. Let me just throw magnesium in there just because Australians are notoriously low. It's a mineral that is involved in over 200 like almost every interaction in our cells. And it really helps with sleep. And also if you're insufficient or deficient, it will make you feel very fatigued. It's another marker I measure. So if you kind of suffer constipation, then the Bioceuticals Ultra Night Muscle Ease. If constipation and sleep is a goal for you, that Bioceuticals Ultra Night Muscle Ease is a good one. If anxiety and sleep is an issue for you, then Carmex by Metagenics. It's got the glycinate. So there's 2 different types of magnesium. So the citrate is the one that's good for muscle cramps. That's the Ultra Night Muscle Ease, constipation and sleep. But if anxiety and sleep is an issue, then you want the glycinate, and that's the Carmex, which is out of stock at the moment. So there's another one called Mag Duo by Biomedica, and that's a great one as well for sleep and anxiety.
Amazing. That was such a generous share. Thank you so much. And I think just something that popped up in my head while you were going through this is that I think it's so important to find a doctor that you trust, and someone that you know is going to support you through this journey, irrespective of whether it's when your conception journey, preconception, postnatal, whatever journey you're in. I think finding the right GP for you that is going to work with you to find that optimum health and make all of these suggestions about this, like the sprays and the drops, and being able to have you listen to this podcast and go back and be like, okay, I've just listened to a podcast. I really like to get these biomarkers looked at, and then have them support you in it, because I think so many GPs, like you were saying, and don't get me wrong, I think they do a fantastic job. I absolutely love my GP. She is the best, which I think is why I'm saying this, because it's so important to find the right one that's going to support you through all of that.
100%. That's why I love integrative GPs. I love functional GPs. If they've got any training in lifestyle medicine, look for the qualifications in lifestyle medicine, women's health specialists. And I think that you've got to ask some of those questions of them initially, especially if you're wanting to take this proactive approach. My integrative GP, Dr. Yasmina Dedick-Hagen, does telehealth. So that's great, because it means wherever you are in Australia, you can see her over telehealth. She says, get your local GP for your sore throats and, your prods and your pokes and all, and your family and your kids and everything. But I see Yasmina for all women's health issues that are more those kind of chronic issues that we're managing, or that proactive health. And 100% agree with you, because there's lots of incredible ones out there. And then there are lots that are just kind of seeking that disease, and they won't do that extra layer because they're just too busy.
That's very true. Now, I have one last question for you before I let you go. And that is, what's the one thing that you wish all women knew before they had a baby?
Definitely what their biomarkers are telling them. I think I gave that
Yeah.
away early in the session because if I understood what my body had been whispering to me for a long time, then I could have avoided a lot of the issues that I had. And I think I would have treated my body with more respect, to be honest. I just kind of assumed that what goes on under my skin is out of my control and it's all working fine. But when you start to really understand what these markers are telling you and that you can make targeted changes, it gives you more agency on your own health. And the one thing I realized, the other thing I wish someone had told me, is that no one is coming to save us. There is no amazing magic bullet or one incredible doctor or specialist that's going to save us. We are the only person that is, and we know our bodies better than anyone else. So let's get the education in so we can really discover what's going on the inside.
Now, that actually brings me to one last thing. I'm sorry. And that is,
but wait,
I know. Getting to know your body. Now, I feel like before I release you into back into the wild, I have one more question. So I find so many women are so disconnected. We're so busy. We live in this busy culture where busyness is almost held up on a pedestal, where it's almost like the busiest person in the room wins kind of thing. And I think in that quest to be busy and listen, some of this stuff is really important. You know, we need to put food on the table and roofs over our head and all that kind of stuff. But in all of this stuff, we lose touch with our own bodies and the signals that they're sending us. And we lose touch with how to connect and understand what's going on and feel what's going on in our bodies and listen to that intuition that we all have about what's going on with us. Based on your experience, have you got any suggestions for women to be able to help tune into that a little better, given our fast-paced lives?
I love this question, and I'm probably going to have a slightly different answer to someone else. You kind of will expect me to say you've got to slow down and listen to your body and all of that, but I'm actually a really data-driven person, and what I have found is that the more I have data to back up what my assumptions are, the more I trust my instincts. So, for example, wearables were a big game changer for me with my own health. Being able to, so heart rate variability, which is a great indicator. It's basically the closest indicator of measuring your stress levels. And so for me, for example, tracking sleep and my deep sleep and tracking my heart rate variability has actually led me to becoming more intuitive, understanding my biomarkers and my hormone levels. For example, I can now feel when my estrogen level, I'm so in tune now I can feel the fluctuations in my estrogen levels, and I know when I need to have some more cooked cruciferous vegetables to help with metabolizing estrogen. I know when my estrogen levels have plummeted, so I'm going to have some more phytoestrogen. So I'll be seeking those edamame beans. I'll be seeking the soy milk. And really, it was actually data that helped me become more in tune with my body, which is probably going to be the complete opposite to if you get a beautiful yogi meditator on here where they're going to be like, I just felt the vibration. Unfortunately, I don't work that way. But when the data tells me and then I feel it and then I make the change and my data reflects that change, such as box breathing before sleep. When I box breathe for 2 minutes before sleep, I see my deep sleep go through the roof. I see my heart rate variability jump up, which is a good thing. The higher the variability, the less stressed you are. So then I'm like, okay, that's intuition with a little bit of help from data.
But that's great. I love that because everybody's different. And I feel like I would probably be a little bit more in your data realm, if you know what I mean. So I like that a lot. I mean, maybe I kind of straddle both sides depending on where.
Yeah, it will resonate with some and it won't with others. But that's my true answer.
thank you so much for your time today, Amelia. It's always such a pleasure seeing your beautiful face, and you have shared so generously from all of your vast knowledge around well-being. So thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. I hope your beautiful audience got something out of it and they feel armed with a couple of take-homes that they can go and implement.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
And if you're hearing this message, I want to say a huge thank you, because it means that you've listened to this entire episode. Of course, if you have any questions about the things that we covered in this episode, or want to know more about me or my other projects, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at The Pregnancy Process. For those currently in their conception or pregnancy journey, you can apply to join my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. And you'll find my community application and social media links in the episode description. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I absolutely encourage you to share it with other women just like you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.